New missiles save Ukraine from deadly night strike. In other words, Putin fails again against Ukrainian defense. It is Tuesday, January 20, 2026. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Aria in the latest podcast by Defense Report for sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover, well, a situation that honestly looked impossible, and I mean physically impossible, about 48 hours ago. Just hours ago, under the cover of darkness, Russian forces launched a massive combined attack on Kyiv, Dnipro, and Vinnytsia. It had all the hallmarks of a knockout blow to the energy grid, swarms of drones, cruise missiles, ballistics coming in from every angle. But the lights are still on. The shield held.
It did hold. But the mission of this deep dive isn't just to celebrate the fact that the lights are on, it's to understand how incredibly close they came to going out. Because until this morning, that shield was cracked wide open.
That is exactly what we are going to unpack. We are going to uncover the Franken-SAM technology, which is just a wild story of how Ukraine and the U.S. basically MacGyvered Soviet launchers to fire modern American missiles.
And we're also going to look at Operation Spiderweb, a tactical masterclass where cheap commercial drones took out billions with a B of dollars worth of Russian bombers.
And we have to talk about the Oreshnik threat, that terrifying hypersonic missile that hit near the Polish border just 10 days ago.
Our goal today is to really get into the weeds of how Ukraine went from running on empty, literally zero missiles in some batteries, to repelling a massive strike in the span of a single day. And we need to explain the specific differences between the missile systems that made it happen, because not all missiles are created equal.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the relief of this morning, January 20th, you have to understand the absolute nightmare of the last 3 weeks. You've been crunching the numbers from the Kyiv Independent and other sources. Set the scene for us. Why was everyone holding their breath?
It has been a terrifying start to 2026. If you look at the data, the numbers were incredibly grim. Historically, Ukraine has maintained an interception rate of about 60% for Russian missiles. That's the average baseline over the war. But in the first 2 weeks of January, that rate plummeted to 36%.
36%. That means nearly 2 out of every 3 missiles were getting through and hitting their targets.
Exactly. The shield was failing. And on the night of January 12th, leading into the 13th, it was even worse. Russia launched 18 ballistic missiles. Ukraine intercepted 2.
Just 2.
Just 2!
That is terrifying. It's not just statistics. That's lives. That's hospitals. That's the power grid. So why the sudden drop? Was the system failing? Was the Russian tech getting better?
It wasn't a failure of capability. It was a failure of supply. There's a quote from a Ukrainian lieutenant colonel with the call sign FREE. He put it bluntly.
Yeah.
We don't have enough missiles or radars to do the job. Our radars are getting knocked out every day.
So they were literally running out of ammo.
They were. If you have the best gun in the world but no bullets, it's just a paperweight.
And while they were running dry, Russia wasn't just firing the standard stuff. They escalated things massively on January 10th.
That's right. According to reports from Al Jazeera, Russia fired a hypersonic Oreshnik missile. Now, you might remember they tested this back in November 2024 with dummy warheads, just to show off. But this time, it was the real deal.
And the chilling part.
The chilling part is that it struck just miles from the Polish border.
That is dangerously close to NATO territory.
It is. It was a clear message to the West. Russia was signaling that they can hit the supply lines right at the doorstep of the alliance. So you have interception rates dropping, radars being destroyed, and hypersonic missiles landing next to NATO. That was the context leading up to last night. The Ukrainian defense was on the ropes.
Which brings us to today, January 20th, the turnaround. The headline says, "New missiles save Ukraine." But how close was it really?
It came down to the wire. We're talking hours. President Zelenskyy made a stunning admission this morning. He said, and I'm quoting here, "Until this morning, we had several systems without missiles."
Wait, it's like actually empty, not just low stock.
Completely empty. He said, "Today I can say this openly because today I have these missiles." A major package of interceptors arrived literally the morning of the attack or just hours prior.
It gives me chills.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine being the operator sitting in a Patriot control van. You're watching a radar screen full of incoming threats, red dots everywhere, and you know your launch tubes are empty. You're just sitting there praying the resupply truck pulls up before the missiles hit.
It emphasizes how thin the margin for error is in this war, but the resupply did arrive. The attack targeted major cities, Kyiv, Dnipro, Vinnytsia, but it was repelled. The interception rate jumped back up because the magazines were finally full.
So they got the ammo.
Yeah.
But that leads to the question I think a lot of us have. We hear these names thrown around constantly in the news. Patriot, NASAMS, Iris-T. To the layperson, or even someone who follows the news, are these just different brand names for the same thing, like Coke and Pepsi? Or is there a specific strategy to how they're used together?
That is a great question. And no, they are definitely not just different brands. Think of it like a sports team. They play different positions. You wouldn't put your goalie as a striker.
Okay, let's break down the roster. Who is the heavy hitter?
That's the Patriot. According to DoD reports and analysis from defense communities, the Patriot is your long-range, high-altitude specialist. It's the only system reliably capable of stopping ballistic missiles and hypersonics, like the Kinzhal or the Zircon.
So when that Oreshnik or a big ballistic missile is coming in fast, coming down from the stratosphere, you need a Patriot.
Precisely. The interceptors, the PAS-C3 missiles, are kinetic kill vehicles. They hit the incoming missile bullet on bullet. They are incredibly expensive, but they are necessary for those high-value threats. Zelenskyy himself called it the most effective air defense system in the world today, noting that even the Russians are in shock at its performance.
Okay, so if the Patriot is the heavy hitter, guarding against the big scary stuff, what is NASAMS?
NASAMS is the workhorse. It stands for National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System. It's medium range, it's fantastic against cruise missiles, drones, and aircraft. But here's where it gets really interesting, the synergy. These systems network together.
How did that work? Are they just shouting on the radio?
It's digital integration. See, the Patriot has a massive radar that sees very far. But radars are like flashlights in a dark room. When you turn them on, you can see, but everyone can also see you.
Right, and if the Russians see the radar, they send an anti-radiation missile to blow it up.
Exactly. So here is the trick. The Patriot radar spots a target way out. It can queue up a NASAMS unit. The NASAMS battery can sit there with its own radar turned off, completely silent and invisible to the enemy. It waits until the Patriot sends the data and then launch.
That's incredibly sneaky. I love it. So the Patriot acts as the eyes, and NASAMS takes the shot without revealing its position until the missile is already in the air.
Exactly. It keeps the NASAMS safe from those anti-radar missiles. It's a force multiplier.
Right.
And we can't forget the German Iris-T. Vitaly Klitschko told Der Spiegel that the system guarding Kiev had a 100 shots, 100 hits record.
100%. That is German precision for you.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We know these Western systems are great, but they are expensive, and sometimes they take months to arrive.
Yeah.
Ukraine has a lot of old Soviet launchers sitting around, Buck systems, things like that, but no Soviet missiles left to fire out of them because Russia obviously isn't selling them.
And that supply gap led to one of the most innovative engineering feats of this war, the Frankensam.
I love that name. Frankensam. It sounds like a Halloween special, but it's actually saving lives. What exactly is it?
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a Frankenstein monster of military tech. They took Soviet Frankenstein hardware old launchers like the Buck and retrofitted them to fire Western SAM or surface-to-air missile technology.
So they are jamming American missiles into Soviet launchers. That sounds like trying to run an iPhone app on a Commodore 64.
It's a massive engineering challenge, but they did it. There are 3 main variants we know of. The small version fires AM-9M Sidewinders. Now, you know, Sidewinders, those are usually air-to-air missiles on fighter jets.
Right, the heat seekers. Top Gun stuff.
Exactly, but they rig them for ground launch. It's a shorter range, but great for catching drones or cruise missiles. Then you have the medium version.
Yeah.
This takes those Soviet Buck launchers and adapts them to fire American RIM-7 Sea Sparrow missiles.
And the large one.
The large variant is arguably the most impressive. They integrated Patriot missiles with old Ukrainian radars. This allows them to use the high-end Patriot ammo without needing the full, scarce Patriot battery setup.
That is incredible ingenuity. It's like putting a Ferrari engine into a 1980s Lada.
And it works. But the biggest aha moment here isn't just that they built them, it's that Ukraine isn't just buying these or waiting for donations anymore. They have received the technical documentation to produce them independently. They are building their own shield now.
I saw a mention of something called the Grave Hawk in the reports too.
Yes, another asset in the mix. Details are a bit lighter on that one, but it's likely based on the older Hawk missile system, modernized for the current threat environment. The point is, they aren't just relying on one silver bullet. It's a mix of top-tier Western tech, MacGyvered Soviet gear, and everything in between.
Whatever works to keep the sky clear.
Yeah.
But defense is only half the battle, right? You can't just sit there and catch punches forever. Eventually, you have to hit the guy throwing them.
That is the perfect transition to Operation Spiderweb.
This sounds like a spy movie. Tell us about it.
It plays out like one. This happened back on June 1st, 2025, but the details were just released in the Department of Defense Inspector General report, and it's crucial context for the capabilities Ukraine has now. Ukraine didn't use massive long-range missiles for this. They used 117 small commercial drones.
Commercial drones, like the kind you buy at an electronics store to film a wedding.
Heavily modified, strapped with explosives, but essentially yes. And here is the kicker. They launched them from trucks inside Russia.
Wait, hold on. They had teams inside Russian territory.
That's the implication. They infiltrated deep behind enemy lines to shorten the flight time and bypass border air defenses. They targeted 4 air bases. The result, they damaged over 40 aircraft and destroyed at least 10 strategic bombers.
10 bombers. Those things are massive. They are nuclear-capable assets.
And expensive. The estimated damage was over $7 billion. Think about that cost ratio.
It's insane.
A swarm of cheap drones, probably costing a few $100,000 total, destroying $7 billion in strategic assets.
That is an unbelievable return on investment. It really shows how warfare is changing. It's not just about who has the biggest budget, it's about who can be the most clever.
And this asymmetry is wearing Russia down. The DoD reports state that by mid-2025, Russian casualties had surpassed 1 million.
1 million. That number is just... it's hard to wrap your head around.
Killed, wounded, or missing. To put that in perspective, the fatalities are 15 times greater than what the Soviet Union experienced in their entire decade-long war in Afghanistan.
That is staggering. How does a country sustain that?
They are struggling to. The reports mention a death spiral. Russia's death rate now exceeds its birth rate. They are literally shrinking as a nation, and morale is plummeting. We're even seeing reports of North Korean troops on the ground suffering heavy losses, with captured soldiers revealing very poor morale. It's a meat grinder.
It sounds like a house of cards. But let's bring it back to the listener for a second. We're talking about billions of dollars in damage, billions in aid, missiles, drones. A common question I see online, and it's a fair question for taxpayers, is this money actually getting there? Is it being stolen?
It's a valid concern, especially given the history of the region. But the DoD Inspector General's report is very clear on this. The oversight is massive. There are specific end-use monitoring programs. This isn't just writing a check and walking away. U.S. personnel are tracking this gear to the front lines.
And Ukraine knows the stakes, right?
Yeah.
If the money disappears, the defense collapses.
Exactly. They have restored independence to anti-graft bodies. But the proof is really in the pudding. Operation Spiderweb and the interception of this massive attack on January 20th prove the hardware is there. You can't shoot down a hypersonic missile with a Phantom interceptor that was sold on the black market. The fact that Kyiv is standing today is proof the aid reached its destination.
That's a really good point. If the systems weren't there, we'd be reporting on a very different tragedy today.
And the relationship is evolving. There is a new U.S.-Ukraine investment fund. It's not just handouts anymore. Revenues are shared, and future military aid counts as a capital contribution. It's moving towards a partnership rather than just a donor-recipient dynamic. It's about building a sustainable defense industry in Europe.
So what does this all mean? We've seen a terrifying start to the year, interception rates dropping, and a hypersonic shot across the bow of NATO. But then, the last 48 hours, a complete turnaround.
We saw the system work. The supply chain, as tight as it was, delivered just in time. The ingenuity of the Frankensams provided a critical stopgap when the standard ammo ran dry. And the strategic strikes like Spiderweb are thinning out the Russian fleet so they have fewer planes to launch missiles from.
It feels like we're watching a real-time experiment in the future of warfare.
We are. And here's the thought I want to leave you with. Russia is a nuclear superpower. They are throwing everything they have. Hypersonic Oreshnik missiles, North Korean troops, human wave tactics, massive drone swarms. And yet, Ukraine, armed with a substantial package of aid and systems they literally glued together from spare parts, just reset the board.
If a Frankenstein system can hold off a superpower, what does that say about the future of global military power?
It suggests that agility, intelligence, and innovation might matter just as much as raw firepower. It suggests that the little guy, if he's smart enough, can hold the line.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.